A very good day to you. Now today I'd like to talk to you about the Pat Martino minor conversion theory. Now this is the case. Others and myself try to teach you all about theoretical concepts to become better at making music or just for the fun of it. At times such an overload of all that complexity can be frustrating. In the short term this could lead to mechanical and even sterile playing in an effort to apply all these concepts. Still, in the long term, this could boost your creativity for the better. Now, a time ago, Pat Martini found a shortcut to overcome this problem of complexity by simplifying the harmony by converting everything to minor. Now, applying the technique would get you something like this. But there's much more to gain. Now, how this works we will see in the next chapters of this video, where we will try to get that unmistakable rich jazz sound. The concept is described in his book Linear Expressions that is published in 1989, in which he describes the substitution of chords into minor equivalents. Now the result is that we only need to think of minor scale language when improvising over any chord we encounter, and sound amazing at the same time. Now this vastly simplifies improvising. Many different types of chords can be translated to just one minor scale. For instance, G7, B minor 7 flat 5, F major 7, D flat 7 and E flat major 7 all can be converted to D minor. Now how this works we will see in this video. Besides the minor conversion theory, Pat Martini wrote 5 pre-composed minor language melody licks, which he called activities or lines. And those can be used very successfully over any progression. And these extra color notes and tension notes in the Martino lines add in a little bit of extra detail into the simplicity of the minor conversion. Now you don't need to learn the activities per se, but it will help you to create beautiful rich jazz lines almost instantly. So what's it all about? Well, Pat Martino looked at the G9 chord for instance as a D minor chord with a G in the bass. For him, the G dominant chord translated to D minor. So he would play a D minor or D Dorian or D melodic minor scale over that G dominant 7 chord. All 3 scales would work and he called this a minor language. So a minor conversion rule is over non-altered dominant chords like G7, G dominant 9 and G13, we should play the minor scale of the 5th degree. So D minor over G dominant 7. Another example would be the half diminished chord or minor 7 flat 5 chord, often causing a nervous breakdown for beginner improvisers. Martino saw the B minor 7 flat 5 chord as a D minor chord with a B in the bass. In fact, it can even be seen as a rootless G dominant 9 chord. In other words, he converted the B dominant 7 flat 5 chord also to the D minor language. In this case, a D Dorian scale would be a good option. So another minor conversion rule is over half diminished chords, play the minor scale of the minor 3rd degree. Now if he encountered a major 7 chord, he converted that chord to its relative minor scale, because those scales contain the same notes. For him a C major 7 chord became an A minor chord or A minor language. And so he would play an A minor scale over a C major 7 chord. So the rule is, over major 7, major 9 and major 13 chords, play the minor scale. Also modal and altered options are possible. However, I heard Pat Martino saying once that he was not thinking in modes too much. Anyway, if you would play an A Dorian instead of an A minor scale over a C major 7 chord, then this would result in a Lydian modal sound because of that major 6th F sharp that is also the augmented 4th in the C Lydian scale. So that is the minor conversion in a nutshell. And in the next chapters we'll expand on this concept and also look at the Pat Martino lines. So let's take the basic 2-5-1 in C major built from the D minor 7, G7 and C major chord. To improvise we have at least these options for the chords in the 2-5-1. Now as you can see, those are quite a lot of choices. Now as we just have learned, Pat Martino simplified improvising drastically and still get very satisfying results. Now, following his minor conversion, we should play D minor language over the D minor 7th chord, because that's already a minor chord, and like I said, it doesn't need a conversion. Over the G7 chord, we should play the minor scale of the 5th degree, which is also D minor. So we'll get the 5th, the 6th, the minor 7th, the root, the 9th, the sharp 9, and the 11th, and that sharp 9 will result in a nice altered tension. The C major 7th chord translates to the minor scale of the relative minor, which is A minor. The explanation is simple, both scales use the same notes. So now we only have to use 2 minor scale types for 3 different chord types. In the next example, I was thinking in D Dorian over the D minor 7 and G dominant 7 chord. That D Dorian scale is a D minor scale with a major 6th degree, B, that is very common in jazz. Over the C major scale, I was thinking in the relative A minor scale. Now let's do the same for the minor 251 in C minor. Again, the possibilities to play over these chords are many, but we'll use the minor conversion to simplify this. Over the D minor 7 flat 5 chord, we should play the minor scale of the 3rd degree, which is F minor. We already know that we should play a D minor scale over the G dominant 7 chord. And over the C minor 7 chord, we should play a C natural minor scale or C Aeolian scale, since this is already a minor chord and doesn't need conversion. But we will take a slightly other approach, because the F minor scale sounds more than great over the G dominant 7 chord too. And that is because the F minor scale contains all the altered tension notes for a rich sound full of tension. Now, we've got the flat 7, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the flat 5 and the sharp 5. So that's a true altered outside sound. I use the F Dorian scale in this example instead of the F minor scale though. But both scales will do very fine. So the rule. Over a dominant or altered chord, we can play the minor scale language of the minor 7th degree for an altered sound. So, F minor over D minor 7 flat 5 and over G dominant 7 or G altered. Now, Pat Martino wrote 5 minor lines in 5 different positions that correspond with the 5 positions of the diatonic minor scale. And these lines can be deployed over every chord progression, such as the 2-5-1, but also over more complex progressions. Now, if you learn these lines, then you already have a great amount of minor language to sound great over any chord or any chord progression. And these lines that have a Dorian modal flavor are called activities. So, activity 1 to 5. Let's look at the first activity that is linked to the root position of the minor chord, and thus the 4th pattern of the cage system, if you like to think in that way. It sounds like this. Now you could notice a couple of things here. It is a chain of 8 notes with no rhythmic variation. And the 6th F sharp and sometimes the 7th G sharp are major, making it a melodic minor kind of lick, which is a minor scale with a major 6th and major 7th degree. Rare in pop and rock, but very common in jazz and fusion. And also, it is divided in groups of 8 notes, also very important. Now I'll play the lick over a 2-5-1 in G major. So, a melodic minor language over the A minor 7 and D7 chord. This Martino line can be started on any of the groups of 8. So you could start on the 2nd group, for instance, and it will sound like this over a faster chord change. Or start on the 3rd group for this effect. Or we can change the scale midway. We could play a part of activity 1 in A minor over the A minor 7 chord and change the scale to E flat minor over the D altered chord to get an outside altered sound. And This is another possibility of the minor conversion over altered chords. So play the minor scale of the minor second degree of the altered chord. And then we'll get flat 9, the sharp 9, a third, a flat 5, a sharp 5, a flat 7, and a major 7th that gives a kind of bebop vibe. Now there are 4 more of these pre-composed lines that are free to download from my Patreon page via the link in the description. Over major 7 chords we have 2 options. One we have already discussed because that's the minor scale of the 6th degree of a major chord known as the relative minor. Playing a strict A minor scale over the C major 7 chord will result in a C Ionian flavor because we'll only play notes from the C major scale. But playing the Pat Martino line will create a Lydian vibe because of that augmented 4th F sharp that is persistent in this line. And this sounds very colorful. Now another possibility is playing the D minor Pat Martino line over a C major chord. Because of the strong Dorian flavor, this line sounds Ionian, since D Dorian is extracted from C major. It is the second mode of C major. Now to illustrate the power of this technique, we could analyze a common jazz standard. For example, the famous Take the A Train, written by Billy Strayhorn and played many times by Duke Ellington. The salient detail is that Strayhorn wrote this tune while actually sitting in the A Train on his way to meet Duke Ellington for the first time. Now this song has a clear AABA structure. And in the A section, over the C major 7 and D dominant 7 chord in bar 1 to 4 we'll play the A minor scale. Maybe use a melodic minor scale over the D7 chord to get the major 3rd F sharp and the tangent note, the sharp 11 G sharp. But A minor will do fine too. Over the D minor and G dominant 7 chord we can play the D minor scale. Maybe D Dorian that has the major 6th B that results in the major 3rd B over the G dominant 7 chord. In bars 7 and 8 we could play the A minor scale over the C major 7 chord and D minor over the turnaround D minor 7 G dominant 7. The second time in the A section we do the same thing. In the last 2 bars we'll play A minor over the C major 7 chord. And we'll play either D minor or G minor over the G minor 7 and C dominant 7 chord because G is the 5th of the C dominant 7 chord. The chords are also part of the 2-5-1 in F major. In the B section, in the first 4 bars, we'll find an F major 7 or sometimes an F6 chord in some versions. And here we'll play, of course, the relative minor D minor scale. Over the D dominant 7 chord, we'll play the A minor scale and preferably the Dorian scale or even a melodic minor scale, highlighting the F sharp and G sharp, the major 3rd and juicy sharp 11th. And a Pat Martino line would sound great too. Let's see how this sounds if we keep strictly to the minor conversion concept. Putting everything in a summary, we'll see all the possibilities for the minor conversions. A minor chord converts to the minor scale of its own tonality, D minor to D minor. And this can be Aeolian, Dorian or melodic minor. A half diminished chord converts to the minor scale of the minor 3rd degree, preferably Dorian. So B minor 7 flat 5 converts to D minor or D Dorian. And the major 7 chord converts to the minor scale of its relative minor key. So C minor 7 converts to A minor. Use A Dorian for a Lydian effect. The dominant 7, dominant 9 and dominant 13 chords convert to the minor scale of the 5th degree. So D minor over G7. The altered chord converts to either the minor scale of the minor 7th degree or the minor scale of the minor 2nd degree, and this will create a lot of altered tension notes. A full diminished chord can be seen as a rootless dominant 7 flat 9 chord. That this means that you could play a D minor scale over the D diminished 7 chord, just like over the G dominant 7 chord. And this sounds great. Whatever you might think of this, it is a very easy way to get a jazz sound without too much theoretical knowledge. It is intuitive and easy to learn, and this makes it also fun to learn because it's such a giving technique. Still, I think you should learn theoretical concepts and other ways to improvise too. Now, also knowledge of arpeggios and modes are important to fully understand and gain control over what you play. Also to have freedom while improvising. Anyway, that's all up to you, of course. If you would like me to do a lesson on a certain subject, please let me know. And if you'd like to study offline, then take a look in my ebook store for crystal clear ebooks about all kinds of subjects. For now, bye.